Introduction. In this video I will be analysing the visual qualities and technicalities of the works of Cecily Brown and Jutta Koether. I will also examine the incorporation of historical art iconography in their work and make comparisons between their approaches. Through this process I aim to gain further understanding of their practices and how they implement their themes. By analysing the works of these artists, I will understand how themes and historical art iconography can materialise as content within an art practice. I will learn through this how to further develop my own practice and create quality content. Introduction. Cecily Brown. Cecily Brown is an artist who currently resides in New York City. She moved from England after studying at the Slade School of Art in the early 1990s to pursue her art career. Her practice commonly consists of what appears to be violent sexual themes. She paints with garish colours using vigorous brush gestures and a sensuous treatment of her subject matter. This is what she adds to her imagery beyond what she has chosen to replicate from her found material. Each painting is an experiment with found material on canvas, trialling different compositions and subjects. Brown loves the idea of skin being pulled and things colliding, and she enjoys the effects of creating the emotional charge that handling these themes emits. By forming the appearance of bodies slipping in and out of abstraction, Brown creates a brooding, visceral sensuality, with her love of colour confronting the senses. Tension, grace and disharmony are achieved through the representation of bodies in conflict, the colours used and their relationship between figure and ground. Colour. Brown uses a broad spectrum of colour variation. She is drawn to the use of reds and fleshy tones to portray the human figure and pastel colours to make a painting resonate. She says she gets crushes on colours and that particular colour will feature in her work until she moves on. One colour she favoured was lavender, and it appears in many of her works. At one point Brown refused to use red to develop her scope in colour use. This worked to her advantage. The colours she employs work together in what has been described as a riot. This contributes to the busy look of her paintings. The act of painting. Cecily Brown takes a lot of pleasure from painting and manipulating paint. Besides most commonly using oil paint, she employs ink, coloured pencil, pastel and watercolour, each with just as much mastery as the next. She finds the process of painting a wrestle with materials, though seeing this is not apparent from viewing her work. Though her content appears to be a struggle, its treatment appears effortless and proficient. Slipping between abstraction and figuration. Cecily Brown creates laborious and intricate compositional structures within her paintings. Complex imagery is laid, finding balance and giving shape to spirituality amongst the chaos. Depth of field drifts between figure and ground as Brown loses and returns to form as she builds upon the canvas. Biomorphic figures are slipped in and out of representation amongst expressively sweeping abstract strokes. Brown believes that if she isn't careful she will lose her work to brush marks of the same size. Instead, she works in creating congested activity in areas that lead onto more serene recessional spaces. Old Masters. Cecily Brown's paintings, although largely influenced by the work of the abstract expressionists, are often informed by pre-existing imagery, especially those of the Old Masters. In what has been described as a fortunate haunting, Brown transfigures the imagery of artists such as Degas, Delarue, Hogarth, Bruegel, Goya and Titan. She creates work in dialogue with them, looking back and copying their iconography on into the present. So what exactly does she do? It has been said that she doesn't create a literal translation, but more a rendering of a psychological state. She includes additional themes and influences taken from the abstract expressionist genre and includes her own spin, personality, interest, style, etc. It's the combination of her influences, her own take, and her drives that make her work uniquely Cecily Brown. Many of her works depict her experimentation of different composition and motifs. She will often make monotypes on paper first, repeating her reproductive methods. Brown's painterly reproductions can be interpreted as though she is looking for something within them. Enthusiastically repeating her motifs may help her to learn from them and envision how they can be taken somewhere else. Her intentions are unclear even to herself. Cecily Brown has said that by repeating imagery she can internalize them and become familiar with them. She aims to become so familiar with the images that she can rely on her muscle memory to replicate them. By relating to a chosen historical artist, she sees that questions for consideration in form, flatness, space, shape, and colour are the same today as they were then. The Young Spartans Exercising Revisited. The Young Spartans Exercising is a painting by Edgar Degas Cecily Brown has referenced and returned to many times over the past 20 years. An admirer of the work, she has analysed the tension in the image and how it evokes so many questions about what is occurring. Brown questions the body language of the figures, both male and female, as they come of age. She perceives the insecurities of the boys, along with the arrogance and how they are striving to show off in front of the females and draw their attention. Brown takes joy in the scene, particularly in the female at the front who she believes is the strongest figure. Poses of the figures taken from the young Spartans exercising can be seen moulding in and out of her abstract sensuous environments. She has managed to capture the same strength and intensity within her works. They make subtle reference to their original role but now take on new roles. A curve of the spine and upraised arm all collide with form and colour and are moulded into the substance of activity within her works. She takes the representations of the imagery, copies it onto her canvases, changes the colours and rendering of the imagery to replicate what was iconic and familiar about them. It is the figures themselves she reproduces and their powerful and evocative body language. Her stylistic approach is unique even though there is a large influence from the abstract expressionists. Conclusion. It is difficult to predict what the experience of looking at a Cecily Brown work might evoke. Some have written about their joy, surprise, and uneasiness when looking at her works. What I do find fascinating is the feminine treatment of her subject matter is gentle and soothing, even though the subject is explicit, violent, and confronting at times. I appreciate the chaos and tranquility, figuration, colour, movement within her works. I would find it difficult if I tried to produce such complex relationships and clashes of energy within my own works. Brown is a master of and has a rich vocabulary of colour and tone. I value the combinations of dominant reds and flashy skin tones with pops of bright, unexpected colour that teeter on the edge of being harmonious. I appreciate the fact that something seems to be occurring within her work, but you can't quite put your finger on it. In learning about the background to Brown's work, as well as my own observations, it is evident that Brown is trying to bring historical art imagery alive and make it relevant for critical discussion once again. Though it isn't entirely clear what she is trying to achieve, she is very frantic and fascinated about it. Introduction. Jutta Koether. Jutta Koether is an artist from Cologne in Germany and, like Cecily Brown, has moved to New York City for further inspiration and opportunity. Jutta Koether's art practice is multidisciplinary. She explores her role as painter, critic, writer, performer, and musician. Within Koether's paintings, you may be able to find fragments of scattered thoughts, poems, songs, and coded messages. It is her paintings I am most interested in and will discuss more in depth. Koether's practice has been described as an in-depth account of conceptual experimentation with the addition of expressivity. It is hard to define what is actually authentically Jutta and what is an act of her performance. For instance, she can come across as awkward and unsure. This may be an act of art to reflect the state of the times. Koether creates a completely new genre of her own, which has been said to subvert the establishment. She does this by integrating musical, theoretical, and literary interest in a subjective, experimental existentialism with a trashy, sensuous, and punk materiality. Her paintings are used as a medium, like an instrument in which she performs with. Different cultural themes. Koether's practice has been described as radiantly symbolic magic realism, with pop influences and an agitated primitivism. All these differing themes, when fused together, create their own language. Her unruly stance of associating herself along with the underground punk scene of New York brings a punch into her work. Koether comes from a disobedient stance in art of the untrained, anti-aesthetic and DIY. She positions herself as an outsider, although she is at the centre. The anger and anarchistic twist she adds to her very disciplined and scholarly approach to working with art history and theory is exciting and interesting. Personal themes. Amongst her references and cryptic messages, Jutta places a personal biographical role within her work. It is evident that her character is at the centre of her practice. Jutta's personality. Jutta Koether has a unique personality. She is awkward and intentionally vulnerable. She has been called a cult figure and an outsider wrapped in one. Her angsty, scattered, awkward and shy disposition radiates from her paintings. Although she is wild at heart, she is also intensely disciplined and deliberate in intent. Her personality matches well with her anti-aesthetic, bad painting German heritage. So what do her paintings look like? Her paintings have strong colours, flamboyant smeared and rubbed into the canvas that look like painful raw abrasions amongst a vast white backdrop. Jutta, like Cecily Brown, also loves to use reds. She has made a painting of 20 different shades of reds. Reviewers have stated her work as having gestural energy that is sporadic, distracted and incoherent, that she is too impatient to achieve a satisfying resolution. In her defence, as she comes from an anti-aesthetic background and creates something unique, it is easy to admire her obsessed, spontaneous energy and the dissonance it brings. There is much happening in her paintings. It is hard to tell where to look and where the eye leads next. Her paintings are messy and show everything at once, which questions the notion of artist as professional. It is easy to spend lots of time inside her paintings, and I would like to see an original one day myself. 4 Seasons Revisited. The influence of historical work of art is a less dominant theme in Koether's practice compared to Brown's. Her revision of Cézanne's paintings have a strong connection to the original imagery, even picking up some of Cézanne's quirks and pushing them further. However, the following works that I will discuss taking reference to Nicolas Poussin's 4 Seasons, where there is only minor resemblances. Described as reimaginings, Jutta Koether's Seasons series consists of 4 large paintings mounted on clear glass panels. Like Poussin's originals, there are also 4 paintings. Each painting is a dedication to the seasons of the year. Koether's new interpretations of the paintings are a homage and refer subtly to the originals. For example, a linear recreation of the original golden frame and a reference to the drapery are included. Unlike Poussin's biblical themes, Koether's work are non-secular and make reference to pop iconography more relevant to today. Her subjects bear little resemblance to classical antiquity and are playful and humorous. Why Koether has chosen this particular work of Poussin's is unclear, and it plays in stark contrast to her own themes. It is possible that she just enjoys referencing historical works and delving into the past for interest's sake. The imagery she incorporates today in her own version includes a French racing car driver, Sebastian Vettel, in celebration of a victory with brand names carefully depicted on his suit. There is an abundance of fruit, figures selling fruit, and an individual pretending to use fruit as their eyes or glasses. This could make reference to pagan celebrations of produce of the seasons. In the painting of winter, there is a porcelain cat sitting in the corner staring out at the energetic grey blizzard painted with gestures. All of the 4 paintings make reference to the seasons in a chosen colour schemes, and each painting is titled rightfully to the season it depicts. There is a lot going on in each of the paintings of the seasons, but much of it is unidentifiable. What is identifiable is the slicing lines, parts of figures, and gestural energy. Jutta has said that a lot of what is going on is built up through her performative act of painting and creating multiple layers, a similar process to Brown's. Poussin's reference to a higher order are brought down to earth and applied to the themes of the everyday 21st century. Conclusion. Jutta Koether's influence, personality and cultural context is an interesting and integral part of her practice. She seems unsure of herself, and her awkward approach to both her practice and audience could just be an act aimed to reflect the predicament of contemporary art today. Jutta is an avid participant in a cultural niche alongside the art cultural world. This is a fascinating inclusion. How do Cecily Brown and Jutta Koether's work compare? Their themes vary, their treatment of historical works of art are different. Cecily Brown's involvement with historical works of art is a lot more involved. Both are trying to achieve something that is ambiguous but raises a lot of interesting and relevant questions. There are many motives behind their revisitation strategy, as discussed in my first master's report. Many people are fascinated with their work because they are interesting and on trend. Jutta Koether, unlike Cecily Brown, fits into a contemporary cultural context even though it is a subculture. Cecily Brown's cultural context could be amongst the abstract expressionists. They both want to be associated and held in esteem like their chosen old masters. Today, their revisitation approach could be a genre in itself. The layering approach they employ to build upon an image are somewhat similar, though their techniques are different. Cecily Brown works with layers in blending them in with colour and sweeping strokes, while Jutta Koether's are smeared and blurred fragments. They both created an edge which I admire in their works. It is radical and goes against the grain. Jutta has introduced the theme of anarchism and punk rock materiality within her practice, and Cecily Brown is a female confronting explicitly erotic imagery. They both have clever and intellectual contemporary painting practices with idiosyncratic methods of gesture and painting application worthy of admiration.